Hey folks, and welcome to Tatsfield Walk and Talk Part 2. After the last one that we filmed towards the end of 2024, there were some wonderful comments and suggestions. We've got a new route that we've done, which is mainly around the village. It doesn't go too far out. And once again, I'm ably assisted. So I've got Ian and Tim, who are going to help with the first point, which is the site of the former Beaver Water World.
Beaver Water World started in 1980 when a small Indian python rescued by a local person was deposited here to be looked after. And one thing grew to another, and it became an animal rescue centre where even the RSPCA and other more formal bodies found that there was a welcome and plenty of room to look after mainly reptiles that had been recovered and saved by people in this part of Surrey and southeast London.
Also has a bit of a claim to fame that the alligator in Live and Let Die, James Bond film in 73 or 74, came to reside here, and I think he passed away here many years ago, but that is also a famous point from Tatsfield's side. Now it is a combination of small businesses, and the owner also keeps emus and also alpacas.
So yes, we have, just by the car park here, emus. There's one nearby. Let's give this a go. Hopefully he won't reach out and grab the camera. Oh, he's gone shy. Look at that.
Oh yes, we could have said that.
There we go. So that was a start, Beaver Water World location. I remember visiting it myself and seeing out some of the things that Ian and Tim have just mentioned. So the next stop is just along the road here, and that's the site of the former Tatsfield Rovers football club. So just for context, this is the approach road into Tatsfield, where you come off of Clark's Lane, bus stop just here on the right, and heading down there into Tatsfield, a little sign just over there saying playing field. So we're going to make our way down here now. Ian and Tim are setting off. It's a little bit muddy where it's collected down there. So this is, well, it's a cricket square now, a cricket pitch. It was Tatsfield Rovers FC, and hopefully it will be shown on the camera. There is somewhat of a slope, and Ian can give us a bit of an update on that in due course. This is a clubhouse building that we think dates back at least half a century.
Facilities here have been here for decades. This used to be part of the London Borough of Bromley, and then it was leased by the Tangland District Council. It's been used as a playing field for both for football and for cricket, as we said, for decades now. But one of the strange things about it is that if you are actually sitting in front of the clubhouse at the level we're standing, and then you turn around to look at the cricket, at eye level is the pitch.
Yes.
So it's a little bit of a strange view. So planning permission has just been achieved. We've got a two-storey clubhouse there, so in the first instance it'll be easier to watch the play, and secondly the work will involve levelling the pitch to such an extent that there's no longer a significant slope, which is one of the problems of the existing facilities.
We're quite near Biggin Hill here, as we may have mentioned in the past. So it's sort of going up and over,
Yep.
as well as down. Putting my finger in the camera here, but just to give you an idea. A good future then, potentially, so let's hope that all comes off and we can perhaps come back in the future and see the new design. Good place for cycling. So we've got to point number 3. This is the White House, a very, very beautiful looking property. I'm going to ask Ian to give us a little bit of information about it.
The White House dates back a couple of 100 years. White House Farm was in this part of Tatsfield. As it happens, we have in the archives the announcement of the house being auctioned, and this appeared in the Maidstone Journal on the 22nd of July 1834, and it describes White House Farm as a freehold estate of 80 acres. At the entrance of the estate from the Croydon Road is a newly erected lodge and large garden bounded by the estates of the local squire, the Lewson Gore family, and his associate, George Colthorpe, Esquire. It appears in the archives, sadly, towards the end of the 1800s, when there was quite a serious fire here. But happily, the house was restored, and here we have a relatively newly redecorated White House.
We've got the whole band back together. Graham has now joined us. Say hello, Graham. Hello. And we're heading to where Longley the Butcher's once was. Lots of aerial activity today. I don't know if the mic is picking it up. The ears are, but again, that's the proximity of London Biggin Hill Airport. We did briefly cover this before, but old village club building, and then the shops that featured in Mr. Bates and the post office. Well, as a post office rather than what it is today. And then the old ship, former Nolder and Collier house, and the bakery. We're in Westmore Road, Ian. This is number 6, but this was the site of Longley Butchers.
That's right, yes. For well over 100 years, that was one of the butchers' sites, and certainly that was where Walter Longley set up shop. It remained a butcher's until relatively recently, certainly into this century. But then, of course, the advance of supermarkets and alternative sources of food and everything else basically led to its sad demise and the retirement of the then butcher, Doug Madison, who was living there at the time, but now lives further down, deeper into the village.
So, doctor's surgery here. This is Westmore Road still, where we've just seen Longley Butchers, and newsagents on that one there. Number 12. Newsagents. Until when, do you think?
Well, certainly until the 1980s.
Oh, okay. So relatively recently. I say that of someone who's got a few years under my belt.
Only yesterday for people of my age. But,
So yeah, so you may remember them. Newsagents at number 12, and yeah, just behind me, as I showed earlier, a former doctor's surgery. So we're going to go along here and have a look at some terraced houses, and arrangement terraced houses just show a bit of the age of Tatsfield.
yeah, this is...
So this is Grove Road. I saw the sign, public footpath also, so we're quite legal to walk through here. And yeah, very nice set of terraced houses. A little bit of an extension on the end one there. But yeah, classic design. Are they newer on this side?
It certainly looks like it, yeah. Although it may have been contemporary.
But yeah, these are very nice. April cottage, May cottage, June cottage, July cottage. Ian's leading the way, and if I say the word castle, then you may get a clue to where we're heading next. All to be revealed. So 4 buildings here, fairly new, built on the site of what was Tangland Castle.
Yes, this is where Tangland Castle was, or the castle. It was built sometime during the 19th century, and over the years it's become known as a convalescent home, as a children's home. At one stage, a trade union used it for weekend conferences in the countryside. One of the earlier residents, this was just before the First World War, was a man called Rutland Boughton. He lived from 1878 and died in 1960. He was extremely well known at the time as a composer of an opera called The Immortal Hour. And at that time, it was one of probably the most successful as a long-running opera to be performed in London. And another story about the castle was that it was built by an Englishman who fell in love with a Spanish noble lady. This was a castle built in an exotic style just for his future wife.
What was its ending, as it were?
Well, as the owners passed on, and redevelopment was in the air. At some stage, as quite often happens when there's an empty building, it caught fire, therefore had to be demolished completely and was redeveloped to what we now see today for modern houses.
We're on John's Road now, as we head out to the Manor House, and we just crossed Paysfield Road. When we were talking about this part 2 video and looking at gathering stuff together, you mentioned something that piqued my interest, and then you sent me a little video clip, which I will run in a bit, but the Paysfield Road gang.
Yes. A group of residents of Paysfield Road back in the 1950s became quite close to each other because of the questions of making up an unmade road. As the group got itself organised, they realised they had lots of interests in common, and a lot of them had the same sort of sense of humour. They were aware that Westerham, just across the border in Kent, had a carnival every year, and 2 or 3 of them got together and produced a bigger group and thought, hey, we'll build a float and we'll enter the Westerham Carnival. And the first one, I think, was in 1961, and the last one was in 1987. Not all of them got involved with the Westerham end of things, but certainly within Tatsfield, they would build floats on the verges of Paysfield Road. There'd always be somebody around who had a lorry which could be used as the wheels and chassis for whatever the float was going to be. You know, Tatsfield, being a bit off the beaten track, has probably got quite a significantly higher proportion of self-employed people than in other areas closer into London. That's my assumption anyway. Certainly a significant number of skilled people who will be able to put together gigantic floats, such as the ones that have been filmed over the years. So the entries included the pirate ship, Cleopatra, Chinese dragon, Norman conquest ship, and it was floats like that which drew the crowds together and got and strengthened the sense of community.
Wonderful. Love to hear in the comments if you've got any connection, recollection. Just feel free to join in, and we'll continue the conversation.
Yes, there are still 1 or 2 people in Tatsfield who were members of the gang, and plenty of others who remember the floats and the excitement of the days when they were performing.
Brilliant. Right, we're at Tatsfield Green, and just over in that direction is the Manor House. The road here is quite busy, so I thought, why don't we make it easy for ourselves? We're on a nice bench, having just walked up the hill from where we've just previously been, and we'll have a chat with Ian about the Manor House, a bit about its history, Ian.
Yes, the Manor House is one of a number of listed buildings in Tatsfield. It's a Grade 2 listed building. They reckon it was built around about 1700 with significant restorations in the last century. It's red brick with flint, plain tiled roof with, from the English heritage point of view, some quite distinctive end ridge stacks. The house was the Tatsfield's second manor house. The original one was much closer to the church, but this became the manor house during the 19th century. I mentioned earlier on that there was restoration of the manor house in the 20th century. Well, that was just before the Second World War, when sadly there was quite a significant fire. Then it was the country home of a distinguished surgeon, Mr. Bright Bannister of Harley Street, and the fire was significantly serious enough to be on the front pages of the local newspapers, but happily the building was quite successfully restored and is now maintains its status as a listed building.
Manor House just over there. We've got this lovely green space, some houses over there. And we came up to this location from just down there. We're now going to head in the direction of Graham and Tim to get to the next location. So Ian, one of the things that kept cropping up while we've been sharing information, and I've been understanding information about Tatsfield, and to a degree from my younger years I've got knowledge of this, but that's snow.
Yes. Over the decades, generation after generation has got its own special stories of the snow and Tatsfield. In the archives, 1906 is the first major event, and in later years, the 1920s, there were a couple of winters where Tatsfield was in some difficulty with the snow. 1947 was a bad year. It was a bad year everywhere. And 1963 was a bad year, but in particular here. 1987, we had a sort of double whammy. We had snow the early part of the year, and then we had the hurricane which swept over southern England in the autumn. But the snow at the beginning of the year was such that Tatsfield was actually cut off, apart from the odd four-wheel drive that could make it, for the best part of a week. No public transport. The army was sent up here to supply food for people in the sheltered accommodation. In previous winters, apparently, supplies were dropped by helicopter.
No.
And of course, since 1987, there's been nothing quite as dramatic.
No.
But every time it does snow in southern England, it certainly snows, and the snow lies in Tatsfield. And in those days, if you commuted to London and drove down to Oxted, for example, you would drive down to Oxted with quite a lot of snow still on your car, go into the station car park and discover you're the only one with any snow on it, and with other people wondering why you're dressed for such elements.
So be aware of the forecast, and don't assume that if you're just outside the area, the forecast may be the same as, you know, in a Tatsfield, as it were.
That's true. And of course it does happen in reverse as well. You can get forecasts which say, oh, thick cloud all over southern England, London area, murky, and then you come up here and you discover you're actually above the clouds, and you go to the outskirts of Tatsfield, look south towards the valleys there, and you discover all the valleys are full of cloud, but you've got brilliant sunshine.
Classic microclimate. Royal oak tree planted in July 2013 to commemorate the Diamond Jubilee of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Just looking back, Ricketts Hill Road, there's a wooded area with a bit of history to it down in that direction, down there. This is Tatsfield Green, and I'm going to point out, so the property there, that was an old garage. It's obviously a newer property now, but that was an old garage there, Ian.
Yes, that was the Tatsfield's second garage, in fact, and in my time, a chap called Ernie Mays lived there and ran it, and he also ran a car hire service as well from down there. As you can see, after his time, it was sold off and redeveloped, and is now one of Tatsfield's many residences. Behind there, of course, you've got a whole string of quite old houses along what is Old Lane.
Going in that direction.
Going to the right. And Old Lane is Old Lane because that is the original way of getting from here into the parish of Cudham, which is now Biggin Hill. The road we're on here, Ricketts Hill Road, is relatively new, in other words, 20th century.
Yeah. Opposite, this is Old Lane / Ricketts Hill, but technically Old Lane. That's Sparrow's Hern, which, Ian, that was originally a sweet shop.
But its claim to fame, certainly in the memories of Tatsfield people now, that was where, after school, you went to get some sweets, or sometimes on the way to school, because the school then was on the road towards the church.
Which is the one that we saw in part 1 of the video of
That's right,
take
yes.
one, whatever you want to call it.
The original school, built in the 1840s, was replaced by a new school in this century in the centre of the village, but the old school is now a nursery school.
So Sparrows Herne, Old Lane, and we're just going to go along and up towards Colgate's.
So there's two ways to get from Tatsfield into Biggin. That's the quick one.
So Ricketts Hill Road there, an Old Lane there. So they call this Old Lane, continues up, and Sparrows Herne just up there on the right, just for a bit more context. And that was Tatsfield Green. This is Colgate's.
Colgate is another listed building in Tatsfield. The official listing says the original house was built in the 15th century. It's been modernised as the centuries have gone by, but the original structure is still in an excellent state and therefore still justifies the Grade 2 listed status. Apparently it was originally in the hands of the church. When the Reformation came, it was taken over by Henry VIII and then passed on to various nobles and then passed on from generation to generation to the local squire, the Lucent Gore family.
So Ian, I want to thank you again for your knowledge and your help in putting this together. Really appreciated. I think we found from the first video that there was a lot of people with a lot of interest in Tatsfield, and I think there was almost an enthusiasm for adding in bits that we hadn't quite covered. So I hope that we managed to tick off most of those, if not all. But as ever, if there are things that you feel you want to have covered in another video, please add in the comments. There are some other sites dotted around the location or around the village, which are probably easier to get to by car and then just do some kind of one-off little stops. So we might do that in the future. But yeah, let us know in the comments. There may be a part 3. You never know.
And of course, there's a sort of pseudo health warning that I've got no professional training in history, so there's no absolute guarantee that what I think we've discovered, apart from the references which I've found, such as the English heritage statements, but there's no absolute guarantee that we've got all the facts right. There are plenty of unanswered questions around the place, and maybe when you've seen this video, you can come back and correct some of the things we've said. In fact, where we are now, we are standing very close to the site of what apparently used to be the Institute in Beaver Road. That was a large shed-like building, apparently, which at some stage must have been erected before the parish hall, now the village hall, was erected, or maybe was a sort of rival to it. But at least there are one or two people in Tatsfield who have family recollections of it being a place where dances were held or some celebrations were held. And it's in this road called Beaver Road, and there's no sign of it anymore. But it's certainly mentioned in one or two records that I've got in the archives, but any enlightenment on that would really come in handy.
So there we go. There was a little bit extra, a little bit of homework for you when you're watching the video. But thank you very much for coming along and joining us on this journey for Tatsfield Walk and Talk Part 2. Really appreciate it. If you like the video, hit like. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.